Hello, my darling yarnivores, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 16. I'm gonna talk about why hand-dyed yarn costs so much today. I saw something on TikTok that sort of inspired me, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna do my own yarn-specific one, because why not? And I don't really know what else to talk about, so here we go. I'm also gonna be making an attempt to like turn this into a cute TikTok, so we'll see how that goes. First, let's talk about computing equipment. So if you are a small business, chances are you're gonna have to get a slightly more high-powered piece of computing equipment, be that a desktop or a laptop. Obviously ours is a little bit flashier because we play games on it as well, but you need something that can handle large image sizes, videos if you're doing video, and you're probably also gonna need high-speed internet because it's a pain to try and run a business without it. Stationery. This probably sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but I promise you it's not. Scissors, pens, pencils, Sharpies. All of these things are necessary for running a business, and if you're running a business, they go missing twice as often. Let's talk about pans. Those pans with the lids, I think, cost me between 50 and 60 pounds a piece. Those pans cost me, I think, between 14 and 20. I don't exactly remember how much they were. Spare burners, plastic bowls, pots and pans that don't get used for cooking, obviously. A big green tub full of things like zip ties and squirt bottles and rubber bands and all that kind of stuff. More pots, more spare burners. That one usually lives on the table, but it is not right now. More pots and buckets, of course. The Cheerios are not part of it. They just, you know, live up there anyway. Let's talk about the spin dryer. I've had this for about 18 months and I'm at the point where I don't know how I would even begin to survive without it in my life. It spins out wet yarn and makes it drier to put into the drying tower. This cost me, I think, right around 100 pounds. And I'm not exactly sure about how much electricity it takes to use it, but I only use it for maybe like 20 to 30 seconds at a time. It pushes out the water down here. Obviously, we all have water bills, right? Well, when you're an indie dyer, they tend to be higher. More tubs that are used for dyeing citric acid that I buy in 10-kilo containers. Black non-latex gloves, which have gone up significantly in price this year. Respirators and the equivalent filters. Plastic things to hold all of our pins and all of the yarn. Seriously though, there is a lot of these tubs. Baskets that hold yarn that have yet to be labeled and put away. More plastic tubs. This one holds undyed yarn out here in the living room. This one has yarn loot. Label printer number 1 that we've had to replace 3 times. Remember when I was talking about stationery? Well, there's more. Sticker paper, printer paper, heavy cardstock paper, Xerox paper, many different papers, and many different cardstocks. All of them, unfortunately, necessary. Here we have spare labels. I did just get a shipment last week, so that's why this is kind of full. More stuff that you don't typically think about when starting a business. Packing materials, bags, pizza fold style boxes for pins, more bags, slightly different size bags, envelopes, backings for pin cards, flyers. Up here we have photo props, glitter paper, needles, pins, buttons, straight needles, baskets, fabric. Here we have the heated air. I've had this for a couple of years. It's another one of those things that I don't know how I'd live without it now. And here's some yarn that is currently drying. Over here we have some spare boxes, and we also have photo backgrounds. Over here we have various rolled up photo backgrounds. Some of them you can probably recognize from Instagram posts. There's some sort of concrete looking ones, there's wood ones, there's some other fun ones around the back here that I haven't used for a while. All of these cost between 3 and 20 pounds. And the dye board, which I don't know what my life would be without. I don't remember how much this cost, but it was probably like 15 quid. but I have to buy markers more often because I lose them. Here we have more of the undyed yarn stock. There are 2 massive crates of yarn. 2 big, massive crates of yarn. I'm not exactly sure 100% how much is in here, but they're probably about 30 to 40 kilos of yarn in each of these. So 3 times, probably about, I don't know, a couple of grand in undyed yarn stocks between here and the living room. This is a label printer that cost us nearly 300 quid because there's not actually that many label printers that print the Royal Mail shipping labels in the correct size. I'm also so afraid of this thing that I don't like unplugging it or moving it or even looking at it sideways lest it decide to print all of the labels incorrectly. Also things like packing tape. I have a wide range of different dyes from different companies. As you can see, most of them are from Dharma, which are imported from the US, so that's an extra cost. Each of these costs between 3 and, I don't know, 6 pounds, depending on the color, and the large tubs like you see back there cost significantly more. And things like packages that get lost on their way, be it due to improper address or improper delivery, that get sent back to us and then we have to send them out again. Sometimes this is no one's real fault, sometimes it's just an unfortunate happenstance, but I can tell you for certain it's happened a lot this year. And a lot of people probably wouldn't talk about this one, but samples are going to be a big significant cost as well. Whether you're sending yarn to another indie designer as yarn support for a pattern, or whether you're making things yourself to show off what the yarn looks like and trying to get people to buy your yarn, that's a significant cost as well, even if you are only considering the wholesale amount that you paid for the yarn and not your own effort. And we're also going to need a bottle of rum when we're doing our taxes at the end of the year because our accounting software crashed. So yeah, that's just some of the costs. I'm sure that I've forgotten things that we use for our business. I tried to keep out things like cameras and recording equipment because obviously not everybody does Vlogmas, not everybody has a YouTube channel. It's not like essential to running a hand-dyed yarn business, so I didn't include that stuff. But that was just the stuff of running an at-home yarn business. I didn't include any of the extra expenses for dyers who are going to shows. So that would be stand fees and accommodation, and it would also be things like card readers and making sure that you have a phone that has data on it in case the Wi-Fi at the venue doesn't work, and things like grid walls and displays and buying up extra stock to take to shows and fuel mileage and all these different things. So that's, I didn't even touch what goes into doing shows. I was just trying to cover some of the costs, I guess, that happen when you start running a small hand-dyed yarn business. Obviously a lot of those costs would be the same for any small crafty or handmade business. Especially the things that you don't anticipate will be expensive, like the nearly 300-pound label printer, things like labels and packaging and paper and ink. Printer ink, I didn't include that one. Printer ink and a printer and all these other things that you don't really think about when you're first starting to think about starting a handmade business. I don't say this to discourage people, I'm more just trying to explain why things cost the way that they do. And that just because you can maybe make something for a little bit less on your own doesn't mean that the maker should be charging, you know, only materials cost. Obviously most people who will be watching this aren't going to be thinking that anyway, but I just thought it would be an interesting video to put together and also like low-key depressing for me. I also didn't include talking about other things like the cost of website, whether you have your own website and you have to host it yourself, which has fees, especially if you use a lot of different plugins, or if you're using a pre-existing platform like Etsy or Shopify, or there's a whole bunch of different ones now. There's going to be fees and processing fees and all that kind of stuff involved with those. So those are costs as well, as things like having to register for a business license in some places, accounting software like I mentioned, other software that you may or may not need for your small hand-dyed yarn business, be it things like Stitch Fiddle, which isn't that expensive, but it's still another cost. Other subscriptions to things like software companies. For example, we use Filmora for our video editing, and that's a quarterly subscription cost in order to have access to all of the different things. We use open source software for image editing, but there's a lot of people who use, you know, like Adobe or Creative Cloud, and those are all subscriptions and those are all costs as well. Like I said, high-speed internet is basically necessary if you're going to be doing a lot of things with images, because it takes a lot of bandwidth. So that's another thing to consider. Things like business bank accounts that have fees attached to them, or business credit cards that have fees attached to them, or anything like that. And for some people, there's also going to be the added cost of membership to certain organizations, especially if you're an artist, or, you know, performing artist, or an artistic medium artist. There's, you know, or union membership dues and that kind of thing. I don't belong to any memberships or unions as an independent yarn dyer, but I do things like pay for advertising, which is another big cost that small businesses accrue. And with the ever more competitive platform space for ads, it's becoming more and more difficult to run effective ads without spending an arm and a leg. So those are all kind of things that also come into it. Again, I definitely don't say this to put anyone off. If your 2021 goals is to start a small handmade business, I am rooting for you. I really hope that it is everything that you've ever dreamed of. I hope that it takes off. I hope that you are able to achieve all of your dreams, be it, you know, bringing in extra money, or be it quitting your day job, or supporting your family. I really hope that all of that happens for you. If you've already started a small business and you're, you know, feeling a little overwhelmed by all of the stuff, like, all I can say is, you know, one step at a time. You know, everyone says Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's true, it wasn't. There's a lot of steps that we have taken to get to where we are, and we're not even, you know, anywhere near being the top of the heap when it comes to being a small independent hand-dyed yarn business. There's a lot of people who are much further up the mountain than we are. It is really difficult to not look at other people that you perceive to be in a better position than you when it comes to goals or businesses, and not feel like, oh, well, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not enough this, or I'm not enough that. You know, it's really difficult to ignore all of those, you know, little voices in your head telling you that you're not good enough, and that's why you're not some huge success yet. And I do it too. You know, Sarah's always having to remind me that, you know, success is rarely a waterfall or a flood. It's a lot more of a drip. And even people that you think are overnight successes usually have a lot of grift that they were doing before that you just didn't see, because they weren't, you know, they hadn't hit that magic being in the right place at the right time quite yet. Anyway, my lovelies, I'm going to leave it there for today. We're gonna go have some sandwiches for lunch, some really bougie sandwiches. I'm excited. And then this evening I'm going to be hella packing orders, getting everything ready to go out. I'm going to be dyeing some yarn here and there. But mostly we're just kind of be focused on getting everything out, and then I will hopefully be doing something fun, question mark, tomorrow. I do have some cookies and some baking stuff that I want to do, so I haven't quite figured out when I'm doing that yet, but it will happen. So with that said, I will see you all tomorrow.